as we resume the session, I will appeal to all our other guests joining us to listen in and contribute at a later stage. Switch off all your cameras just for the bandwidth.
Turn off the camera, please.
Yeah.
I know what's
I'll
this about.
I'll just reiterate a few Chelela Ngcetane Vika, if you can switch on your
I'm trying to do that and I'm using a gadget that's different. It's, somebody else's. I'm trying to do that. Just be patient with me, but you can proceed so long. It's not my gadget, so I'm trying to figure it out. Thank you.
Shinga, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mkonazi. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened there. Yeah. So I'm gonna give an opportunity for our bishop to open in prayer and do an official welcoming. Reverend Bishop Mandindi is our bishop in our district. Our district, those who might be non-Methodist, is bordered by Mozambique on the north, and by Umkomazi on the south, and by Midlands on the west. And also we are a connectional church, so we have the whole of South Africa, Mozambique, Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho, and Namibia also tuning in on our Facebook pages. And those who are able to participate on Zoom, they are also here. And other interested groups are also a part of us. So, Bishop, I want to give you the chance to open for us in prayer, as well as welcome our guests. We have Madam Aisha Sisnam Sile and Dr. Vika with us today. If you can open in prayer for us, Bishop.
Thank you very much, Pumlani. Come, let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we take this opportunity this evening to dedicate this prayer to the people of Palestine, people in the Middle East, people in the West Bank, people in the Gaza Strip, people in Jerusalem. We know, Lord, that you see all, you understand all, and that you can put all right at the right time. And so, Lord, as we engage in this conversation, we do it to understand fully and to have an appreciation of the pain that the people in the Middle East are going through as a result of the conflict between Palestine and Israel. And so, Lord, we pray that you inspire us in this conversation. You inspire our panelists as they share their experience and their insight, and as they assist us with what we could be doing to support the efforts of the people of Palestine for their own liberation. Thank you, Lord, for this time. We give you all the honor and glory, now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Shinga, the facilitator of this particular conversation, thank you once more for creating this very rare platform for us to engage once more ourselves on the issues pertaining to the conflict that is taking place between Palestine and Israel. This is the second installment on the Israel-Palestinian conflict. We had the first installment last week, and we had the esteemed panel taking us through the questions such as, why do we bother even having this conversation when we are so far away from the people in the Middle East? But also to find out, how does it affect us, and what can we do to pledge our support to those people. Maybe by way of welcoming both Sister Pamela, Mrs. Aisha, and Dr. Bendani Vika, I just want to give a very brief background. In 2018, I had a pleasure of visiting Palestine. And I got somehow to understand the pain and the plight of the people of Palestine as they shared with us. We were a group of bishops with the presiding bishop then, Reverend Siwa, who was part of the panel last week. So we were taken in a tour, beginning exactly where Jesus was born, right through up until the Galilee experience. We had been to Jordan. We visited Jerusalem. So we got exposed to quite a lot of places. But as we were engaging with people on the ground, people of the Palestinian origin shared with us what they were going through on a daily basis. And among many issues that I was able to pick up during that tour, as we were conversing with people on the ground, both young and old, male and female, educated and uneducated, those were coming from the Christian, Jewish, and Islam background, at the heart of what they shared was the problem of justice. The people of Palestine continue to tell us that since 1948, I think at the creation of the state of Israel, they said, issues of injustice have been at the center of their lives. They talked about that problem of justice. We heard from them as they talked about the loss of their land, loss of their homes, loss of their businesses, loss of their villages. And they believed that because we were a group of ministers and theologians, they believed, those that we interacted with them, believed that any theology of liberation must address the issue of justice in Palestine. And so in view, in their own view, really, they believed that people who want to support them must also assist them and assist the other people, the other group who are oppressing them, not to abuse the Bible. So the issue of justice and the abuse of the Bible were fundamental issues that they raised with us. They believed, of course, that the Bible is the source of strength. They believed that the Bible is offering solutions and that the Bible is leading people to faith and salvation. But they questioned, how can the source of faith be used to oppress them? How can the Old Testament text, which they believe was the word of God, be used to oppress them? And so that is just by way of background, Mr. Shinga, that having been on the ground, indeed, I did experience, there were police, there were soldiers at each and every corner. Never did we see a freedom of movement from people from Palestine. We went to the walls that have been built. We saw the occupation that took place. We saw that children had no freedom to play freely. They were playing, and I could see that was the resistance. They were playing even as soldiers were looking at them with guns, huge guns pointed at the children as they were trying to play. So I just want to believe that this conversation with Pamela, with Aisha, and Dr. Vika will somehow continue to help us understand what is at the center of the conflict and what will be our role from where we are at. Thank you, Mr. Shinga.
Bishop, I thank you very much. Let me then take this moment to introduce our panelists who will be assisting us to fully really unpack this subject in no particular order. I will want to introduce our guest. Our first one is Dr. Telela Redane Vika. Dr. Redane Vika is a staunch Methodist, an author, an activist, intellectual, legal theoretician, and ES methodologist. She is currently an academic at Wits University of Governance with research focused on geopolitics in Africa, the BRICS, Americas, UK, Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific. She's an expert in international law, public governance, security sector governance, and leadership frameworks. She's also an instructor of the Women in Leadership Development Program at SAID, said Business School, Oxford University. Our next guest, second one, is Ms. Pamela Ngubane. I also want to say Namsile. Sister Namsile was born here in KZN in 1981, if I may. In the last decade of apartheid regime in South Africa. After she was born again as a Christian in 2019, she found herself unknowingly exposed to Christian Zionist TV programming. And soon she was accepting the message of Christ and have a responsibility. As soon as she accepted the message of Christ, she had a responsibility to support the Jewish people and what they called the Jewish state or the state of Israel. This led her to meet with some of the leaders of the South African Zionist Jewish community in 2020-2021 to offer them her support. Soon she was hired to be the general manager of the organization, South African Friends of Israel, also known as SAFI, SAFI, a Christian Zionist organization that is a subsidiary to the South African Zionist Federation, also known as SAZF. After swearing in of Israel's current right-wing government, however, she began to question her role in SAFI and the theological soundness of Christian Zionism. She then left SAF in April 2023, and since then, she has been sounding the alarm against Christian Zionism that is misleading millions of well-meaning Christians around the world, and also depriving the Palestinians the space for them to be heard as they express their suffering at the hands of the Zionist state of Israel. She has an honors degree in historical studies and postgraduate certificates in education, specializing in history and in English. Our third honorable guest is Aisha Sayam. Mrs. Aisha Sayam is a PhD candidate in pharmacy at the University of KZN, UKZN, and originally from Gaza City in Palestine. She has been living in Durban for the past 5 years. Alongside her studies, she runs an export business with her husband and serves as a fundraising consultant, Islamic Relief Humanitarian Organization. And she is married and a proud parent of beautiful children. With those words, I would like to also welcome our esteemed guest this evening. Good evening.
Thank you.
So welcome all those who have joined us here on Zoom and also on our Facebook platforms. And say, you guys, and we want to resume our discussion. If it were up to me, I would have called the session Palestine-Israel conflict for dummies. However, I would not want to make light of the suffering and the serious issues pertaining this conflict. But why I wanted to use the term is when I have a discussion that in a person on the street, on the pews of the church, in the baskets, can easily understand what is going on. We knew Israel army had ordered the evacuation of all civilians living in Gaza City and in the northern had
Yeah,
family.
Mr. Shinga,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Shinga.
Yes, Bishop.
Yeah, you are not necessarily audible. You are breaking.
Okay. Something else. Can then also request that we all mute ourselves as I begin. Thank you. Continue to alert me, Bishop, if I become inaudible.
I will.
Yeah. Let me just repeat as my brief introduction. So Israel army has ordered the evacuation of all civilians living in Gaza City and in the north of the Gaza Strip ahead of a feared ground offensive on the besieged enclave of about 1.1 million people. We now have more details about the healthcare situation in Gaza. 93 people killed in Khan Yunis city yesterday. At least 8,306 people killed in Israel attacks on Gaza since 7 October. Figures include 3,457 children, 2,136 women, and 480 elderly people. At least 21,048 people have been injured. 1,950 people remain missing, including 1,050 children. Al-Quds, I might be pronouncing this wrong, but Al-Quds Hospital continues to receive constant warnings from the Israeli army to evacuate. Water scarcity has led to widespread outbreaks of waterborne diseases and skin ailments. Also, I saw on the news headline that Dr. Alan Busak says hosting the US reps amid war in Gaza puts a negative reflection on South Africa regarding South Africa's stance on the Israeli-Palestine conflict. So South Africa in the coming weeks is going to be hosting a talk on the AGOA sort of agreements with Africa, South Africa and the US. But what I found most encouraging is this statement. So Gaza resident Mansour Schumann has expressed his gratitude to the hundreds of thousands of protesters that marched in pro-Palestine rallies around the world in recent weeks. Speaking to the Al Jazeera, Schumann said, whenever people have access to social media, and they are the demonstrations all around the world, trying to support the cause of the Palestinian people here in Gaza, trying to put pressure on their governments to ease the pressure on us here. Their spirits get lifted. On behalf of the 2.3 million people living in Gaza, he wants to thank each and every one of you who go to these demonstrations, who write letters to their government officials, who write their posts on Facebook and on their WhatsApp status. He wants to express gratitude from the people of Gaza. On that note, I want to resume our discussion. So I would want to maybe begin with you, Sister Pamela Mangban Namsil. As I've said, this is a discussion that we want to make anyone and everyone who might not have privy of history to understand. But I understand also history is important in terms of how we actually get here. I would have spoken to you about the issues of the concepts of the Holy Land, concepts of the chosen people, the abuse of scripture and propaganda in relation to Zionism. And you know, on your bio, you mentioned such things, having worked with the Zionist organization. Pamela, if you can just open for us in terms of just taking us through in terms of the background and how we actually got ourselves into this predicament in which we now find ourselves having to actually pledge support for Palestine.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, sis.
Thank you. I just want to say assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters in Palestine. And I'd just like to ask us if we could have a moment of silence for all the people who are being massacred right now in Palestine, in Gaza and the West Bank. Thank you. What's happening as we speak right now is that the Indonesian hospital in Gaza, hundreds of patients are being brought in because about an hour or so ago, Israel dropped about 6 bombs on the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza, wounding and killing hundreds of men, women, and children, innocent people. What's going on is the worst acts of a colonial power trying to continue its hold on the land of the native people of Palestine by killing the native people. This is what Western imperialism has done across the world. It's what it did to us. They want to force the people of Gaza out of Gaza into the Sinai Peninsula so that they can take over Gaza. And when they finish with Gaza, if they succeed, they're going to go and do the same thing into the West Bank and force the people of the West Bank into Jordan. The Zionist state of Israel wants to take, and then from Sinai, they'll probably want to force them into the rest of Egypt. They want to extend the land of Israel from the Euphrates River to the River Nile or to the Brook of Egypt. That's what those 2 blue lines on the flag of Israel represent. And in line with this, Bezalel Smotrich, the current finance minister, made a speech in France a few months ago, standing on a podium wherein there was a flag bearing this type of geographical image of Egypt from the Euphrates to the Nile. So we're dealing with a colonial system here, a colonial state that has been very successful over the last 75 years to pretend that it is a Jewish state where the Jewish people have returned to their land and they are fighting against the Canaanites who want to deprive them of the promise of God. Now, they have thrived because A, people are biblically illiterate, and B, people have been happy to create all sorts of false doctrines like dispensationalism, which say that somehow the Jews and the Christians have a parallel history which will meet when the Messiah rules from Jerusalem. Now, if anyone reads the gospel, it's very clear that Jesus is the Messiah. The Jews rejected him, and that's the story. But the Christian Zionists say, no, the Jews still have an opportunity to accept the Messiah. I don't know what the story is, but generally, the reason why I became a Christian Zionist and why so many people are Christian Zionists is because we were biblically illiterate and are biblically illiterate. We don't know what the gospel says. We don't know what the Bible says. If you're a Christian Zionist, you have to actually supplant the gospel of Jesus, which says, love God and love your neighbor as yourself, with the gospel of, if you bless Israel, God will bless you. And if you curse Israel, God will curse you. It's a political position that uses the Bible, just like the Bible was abused to justify slavery, to justify, like with the curse of Ham, to justify colonization, that us natives needed the Bible to be brought to us by the Europeans to bring us into civilization, to justify the Holocaust, which said that the Jews killed Jesus and so they had to be killed, and now to justify the massacring and the displacement of the Palestinian people in the name of Israel being the new Joshua, claiming back the Holy Land from the Amalekites and the other Canaanites. It depends on biblical illiteracy, like I said, and it also depends on a lack of historical awareness. Just like colonization said that the natives were completely backward and needed the white Europeans to come and civilize them, similarly, you need to be historically illiterate to believe that Palestine was a land without a people, for a people, the Jews, without a land. And to believe also that this is a 3,000-year-old battle, which is never going to end until the Battle of Armageddon gives the Jews the victory over everyone. It negates the presence of Christians and Muslims in the Holy Land. It negates the history of the Christians and the Muslims in the Holy Land. So disinformation and misinformation is basically the foundation of Christian Zionism and of Zionism, and it thrives on divide and conquer. Islamophobia has been manufactured as one of the weapons to divide and conquer the people. We have been taught that the Muslims don't worship the God of Abraham, that they worship another God. And as a result, they are subhuman, and it's okay for them to be massacred, just like the Amalekites and the Canaanites were massacred by Joshua and his army. So I think, like any colonial enterprise, while dehumanizing the people who are being colonized and oppressed, there must also be a manufacturing of a victimhood of those who are doing the oppression. So just like the Afrikaners said that they were victims of British colonialism, they were victims of the persecution of Protestants in Europe, they had to come here and be safe. In South Africa, similarly, we are told the story of Jews who suffered a Holocaust where 6 million of their people were massacred by the Nazis. They needed a home and a safe place, and that place was Palestine. Through their victim narrative, they've been able to convince the world that they are justified in committing the most heinous atrocities against the Palestinian people. But obviously, at some point, people will start to ask whether these atrocities are not excessive, and so the dehumanization has to happen. They don't worship the same God. They are barbarians. Just like Netanyahu keeps saying now, that this is a fight against barbarism. It's a fight against the darkness. It's a fight against baby killers. All lies. But because we ourselves have been so conditioned to believe that everything that the West says and does is right, we are also being conditioned into believing that everything that the Zionists say and do is right. And so we have to cut through so many layers of conditioning in order to understand that what's happening right now is a colonial enterprise which is committing a genocide against the people of Palestine, a genocide which started in 1947 to 49, but which was even preceded by a genocide of the history of the people through the Balfour Declaration, which reduced the Palestinian people to the non-Jewish inhabitants of the land of Palestine, which was being given to the Jews in 1917 to be the place of a national home for the Jewish people by England, to the Zionist Federation of England, of Great Britain. So I think we need to understand this in context of global colonization. And in doing so, we can then understand why also Nelson Mandela said that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. Because we are all fighting colonization. We are fighting the same colonization which took our land in 1913 and reduced us to basically slaves who would be forced to work in the mines, to work as domestic servants, to work on the farms of the white colonizers. That same system, Cecil John Rhodes, Jan Smuts, supported the establishment of the State of Israel to advance the interests of the British Empire. And so when Chaim Weizmann and his cohorts went to the British to convince them to help them establish a state in Palestine for the Jewish people, they did promise the British that they would also help advance the interests of the British Empire. And that is what's happening. Israel has been able to destabilize the region. They've been able to help co-opt many of the regional leaders of their different states. This is what the Abraham Accords basically are, a co-option of Muslim states into being part of the British and American Empire. And indeed, if you look at Saudi Arabia, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the UAE, all these different states that were created through the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was basically the French and the British during World War I, plotting the overthrow of the Ottoman Empire, which controlled all those lands, including Palestine, dividing up this land between themselves, and then making deals with the Arabs, the different Arab kingdoms, you could say, of the area to fight with the British and the French and the allies, the Western allied powers, against the Ottoman Empire, and then promising them that if they helped overthrow the Ottomans, they would be given different states and dominions in that area. This is how the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, for example, was created. That was part of the British mandate. Similarly, Saudi Arabia, and so these kingdoms have been in cahoots with the British Empire, the European imperial system, since 1917, since the end of World War I. And this is why we also have to ask ourselves, why is it that they are so quiet in the face of these atrocities against their own people, their fellow Arabs, their fellow Muslims? It's because they've been co-opted. They've abandoned the principles of Islam in many respects in order to be part of this global economic system that we see, which is based on the exploitation of humanity and the exploitation of natural resources. So I'm saying this because we have to move away from seeing this as some sort of biblical religious war. It's not. Those terms have been used to shield the reality of this just being simply nothing but bloodthirsty, cold-blooded colonialism. Thank you.
Sister Namsi, thank you very much for your presentation. Tell me, I know we were together in a discussion last week in Limpopo. If I can't recall if exactly it was you actually from Hamas who participated in a form of Hamas. If it was not you who mentioned that, do let me know, because I want to come back to that. We did see in the news Israel doing this onslaught on the backdrop of Hamas killing children as payback, killing elderly, hospitals as PEPEC. But hold their thoughts. I wanna give Sister Aisha a chance to actually have a piece in this discussion. Sister Aisha, I'm not using a particular question, but I also want to share your thoughts, as I've mentioned or alluded earlier, either around the concept of Holy Land, the chosen people, the abuse of scripture and propaganda, even if you can go as far as the UN resolution of having Israel as a state. I know Sister Mubane also did go to some degree on that part. And the series of events, or rather adverse events, that took place after the promulgation of Israel as a state. You know, if I can give that opportunity. Can unmute yourself, Aisha.
Thank you, brothers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just first, I just want to add on what's the update you about the stats that's after the two massacres that just happened 1 hour ago. So the number of martyrs now raised up to 8,700 something, and the children become over 4,000 a child. They destroyed the whole neighborhood of a block composed of more than 30 houses with 6 bombs that weighed more than 6,000 tons of bombs, which I found is very, very, very strange. Why all of this? Well, it's just residential area and hosting innocent people. And let's return back to the I will speak today as a Palestinian, as a Muslim, and as a citizen from Gaza City. So I will share with you the view that Muslims and Arab who live in Gaza look to this struggle from the beginning. And from the experiment that I had with my life and the Jewish people who I had met and my knowledge. So first, let's say that this conflict is not happened in 7th of October, not in 1948. It happened a long time ago. And actually, the problem is that we had with Israel is that they believe that they deserve this land, which is gifted to them as a promised land, and they deeply believe in the concept of the chosen people. So first, there is no difference between or no doubt that both Jewish or Muslims or Palestinians consider Palestine as the Holy Land, and specifically about Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. But Jews established their exclusive claim to this land by considering it a divine promise granted to them without shared ownership. So it's critical to note that this promise, as stated in the Torah, was granted by Allah to the Prophet Abraham, the father of the prophets, as we all know. So we all know that Prophet Abraham has children, and the eldest one was Prophet Ismail, the second one was Prophet Yaqub. The question arises here, why did Prophet Abraham's son, Prophet Jacob, or Israel as Jewish named him, inherit this promise while his brother Ismail didn't, while both are brothers? On what basis does this land become an absolute promise and exclusively shared Prophet Yaqub and his descendants? This is the first one. The second thing that I always become amazed about, they it is imperative to recognize that the God, Allah, doesn't exhibit favoritism or show preference. His divine favor is bestowed upon individual based on their goodness and good needs, consequently. So the Holy Land, where numerous prophets lived and passed through it, is not an exclusive property of any particular group. Instead, it is inherited by those who worship God devoutly and uphold justice within its boundaries. I refrained from delving into the topic why Jews were forfeited their entitlement to this holy land due to their disobedience from the prophets and their disbelief. This is another topic, and I won't discuss it. But I want to emphasize that Allah is justice, and the earth belongs to Him, inherited by His righteous servants who worship and cultivate it. This principle underscored that everyone, including the Prophet, is subject to Allah or to God's divine plan. There is no favoritism for anyone. As well, prophets faced rejection, intimidation, and persecution from the people before few of their people believed in their message. So we as Muslim, in every Quranic verse addressing the entitlement of believers, either sons of Israel or they are the followers of Prophet Muhammad, so any promise or any compensation or reward, it's always conditional. It's not absolute right. It's always conditional for his obedience, for his commandments and righteous belief. And the cultivation of the land. So no doubt that disobedience, disbelief, transgression, and oppression will nullify any entitlements of such promises. We realize that throughout the history, various cultivations have inhabited the land of Palestine. It's not only the Israeli. And the demonstration of God's divine plan, Jews actually exercised a complete authority only during a specific historical periods, not all the time. So during that time, the Prophet Solomon, the main period that they control the Holy Land is during the Prophet Solomon time and the construction of the temple that they claimed by Israel to be Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. And just have to acknowledge that despite all of this, their extensive excavations, no exclusive evidence substantiate this assertion. So regarding the holiness of Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa Mosque for Muslims, it's actually rooted in their historical significance, as it was the first Qibla for all prayers on all the world. It's not only for Muslims, and then it is the third holiest mosque in Islam. So I'm not here to negotiate about that, because as in the beginning, I just illustrate that the Holy Land is for both sides. But I am here to emphasize that Palestinians claim to Palestine because they rooted in their status as a natural continuation of diverse people and tribes that have inhabited Palestine for thousands of years. When the Prophet Abraham migrated from Iraq and stayed in Palestine, there were Arab tribes, the Canaanite tribes, Bani Canaan, were lived there. Abraham lived with them for a while, then he went to Mecca, then he returned back to Palestine where he lived until his passing, and then subsequently his son Jacob, accompanied by his son, relocated to Egypt, return, and then they return to Palestine after a long time. So while they are moving into Palestine and getting out from Palestine, there is population, there were tribes living there who are the original citizens of that land. So through this time, the original Canaanite inhabitants preserved coexisting with successive civilizations and nations. Palestinians considered as the descendants of these ancient Canaanite tribes, and they have an indisputable connection to the Holy Land, and no entity possesses the right to displace them from it. This is the basic of the conflict, the base of the conflict between the two nations, between Jewish and Palestinians. Now, let's now go to the propaganda of that, the Zionism, and how they use it to to reach the point that we are now suffering from. Actually, Zionism played a political philosophy within its propaganda framework, rooted in ideological principles and comprehensive understanding of their target and the audience. The approach aimed to reshape the public reception of Jewish and implementing a dual propaganda strategy. The first one was to affirm a Zionist authority and another to distort the image of Arab. This strategy aimed and achieved immediate and in long-term goals. So Jewish propaganda has successfully to transform the image of Jewish from being despised individual associated with greed and selfishness and hatred into victims, a narrative that require collective compensation and elevation from all of us. Historically, Jews were persecuted and expelled from the whole Europe countries for decades, demonstrated by events such as the Holocaust and the anti-Semitism movement, and then their agenda and propaganda abused these terms to its advantage. So they abuse these terms, which is what they experience in the Holocaust and what they experience in the anti-Semitism, and use it in the propaganda that we are facing now. But the world has changed now. So please don't limit our conflict to what happened in 7th of October. We have all witnessed how even the American president was deceived by their propaganda. Israel has been lying for more than 100 years, not in 1948. Their founders began planning to obtain Palestine as an alternative homeland to compensate for Holocaust they experienced. These lies continue, claiming the Palestinians they are killing children and raped women in 7th of October. And actually, this is what the Jewish was doing for 75 years, destroying Palestinian homes and killing them, displacing them, as we know, in 1948. Videos which documenting actually some Israeli soldiers' crimes against Palestinians, they were speaking very proud about what they did to the Palestinians, are in YouTube, and everyone can watch them. What Israelis have done to Palestinians over decades suppressed actually superpasses the Holocaust. And the image flooding of now in social media platforms serve as a proof of that. The killing of over 8,000 Palestinians, 40 of them from children and women, in just 3 weeks. It is genocide and ethnic cleansing. Sadly, it is witnessed by the entire world, the whole entire world. The destruction of more than 40,000 entire homes and the conversion of over 250,000 residential units into uninhabitable places, which actually need to be demolished again before reconstruction, shows sheer evil. Bombing houses while their residences inside is crime unmatched in the in the human history, not seen in any of the worlds the humanity that has witnessed before. It is time for Palestinians' voices to rise in outcry. Please, enough. How much more bloodshed and body parts and destruction do Israel want and their leaders become satisfied? How many more photos and videos does the world need to see before they can force Israel to stop this war immediately? How many more years we do as a Palestinian must endure all forms of persecution until the world recognizes that we are human and deserve to live as a human in our land, and actually we need to defend ourselves like any other nation without be condemned or blamed for that. I just want now to emphasize two examples of how propaganda of Israel changed the whole world in simply like that. All of us watched the video of the bombing of the Baptist hospital, which were there 800 more than actually. Up to my knowledge now, they reach 1,000 martyrs or killed. Israel claimed it was a mistake, which is Islamic Jihad, which is the Palestinian resistance movements, did it. Okay, and just they believe it like that, and no one asked himself is this right? If Palestinian has such rocket capabilities or this force, shouldn't the number of Jewish who now did because of these rockets be in thousands? I have some stats that showing that Hamas and Islamic Jihad, the both of the resistance movement, since the last or among the last 10 years, they fired 32,000 rockets in Israel. These 32,000, which are homemade, only caused death for 60 Israelis. So how come one bomb of these rockets killed 1,800 people? And it's just bust like that and people believe it. The second one, watch the video of the witness who survived in the first day, in 7th of October attack. She was interviewed by the Israeli media to realize that Israel do extensive destruction by their army on their army sites by themselves around the Gaza perimeter. That was caused in same day. It was the destruction that caused was by the army, the Israeli army, and it wasn't happened by the Hamas soldiers or the resistance, because we all saw how Hamas and soldiers enter into Israel. They were only in simple cars, and they will just with a few weapons which they can carry and can run with it. So it's impossible to cause this damage. This burned houses and destructed houses, it's impossible to cause by person. Actually, from this, the attack that Hamas did or the Palestinians did, they targeted the army sites and the surrounding settlements. And the first objective of this attack was to capture as many soldiers as possible. Why? Because every Israeli life is precious, and to the extent that it can be exchanged for thousands of lives of Palestinians' lives. So, sorry. So Palestinians intended from this attack to capture as many soldiers as possible. They intended to exchange them for thousands of prisoners, Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli jails. I don't deny that killing that day happened, but all the killing or the killing that we saw can be justified within the contents of the events and the mess that happened that day. And it only lasted for a few hours and it ended in the same day. But my question, which can't be even never been justified, is the killing of thousands of Palestinians, and it continued for 24 days, killing more than 8,000 of people, 2/3 of them from children and women, and burying them under the rubble of their houses. Haven't you had enough bloodshed? Haven't you satisfied your thirst for revenge? How much longer we should wait the ceasefire? All of us know that the UN resolution of having the Israeli state that's happened in Wad Balfour, when Britain just give them the land as a gift. So I just wonder, what right does Britain have and what entitlement does the Israel bosses will do? And where actually the Palestinians from their calculations? I asked this question to many Jewish people. What gives the Britain or the Britain the right to give the land to another population and just ignore that there is another population live in Palestinian land? And I searched too many hours to realize that they based on one thing. They based on that the Israelis claim that Palestine didn't have a people or a government that time, and they said it was a part of the Ottoman Empire with no direct government control or no population, a definite population living there. And the Israeli consider themselves as a population without land, so they deserve that land. And Britain gives them this land as a compensation of what's happened with them, what they experienced at the Holocaust. So I want to provide documentations about that we inherited by Palestinians from generation to generation, or the case that we still have. Not all the pictures and the videos and the maps which is everywhere in the social media that showing the arriving of Israelis to our ports in early 19th. Or I rely on recent stats that presents actually in the Israeli media, which says that 70% of Israel population hold another nationalities. So what kind of people is this? What population has every 70% of the population has a second nationality? More, I actually was wondering when I found a visa application documents available. Actually, you can find it online. It's available, proving that the Zionists came to Palestine as refugees, and they obtained entire visa from the British consulate, including one of the most important prime ministers in the history of the Zionist entity, who entered Palestine in the 28th of August in 1940. This person was Shimon Peres. He's Jewish. He entered Palestine in 1940 as a refugee, and he got a visa just for 2 months. In that document, at that time, Shimon swears in the attached visa that he will be loyal to the state of Palestine. This supposed Zionist claims that Palestine was a land. So, additionally, he signed on that he will be loyal to the state of Palestine, and the document also show that I just want has a point to refer is that in his visa there is what proof there was where there that time the Palestinian has a government and the British has a visa consulate inside Palestine, so that's proof that Palestine that time was a country and with and has the loyal okay. So this is just to said that the Palestine that time was a state and with all characteristic of the nation, and the evidence from the existence of the British consulate in Palestine, which granted visa to British citizens wishing to enter Palestine. So this is the reply to who said that Palestine that time hadn't a population and don't have a governance. So we all of us. One more thing that I want to highlight here also is that when the Israeli refugee to Palestine, actually Palestinian people welcomed them, and they opened their arms and they show hospitality and generosity to them, and they shared their lives with them. But the Jewish repaid this kindness in the way that all of us now see. Truly, I'm always astonishing why a group of people who went through this immeasurable pain and suffering that they didn't deserve in any way in Europe in early 19th, they would return around and inflict same immeasurable pain and destruction on a group of people who have never done anything to them and just want to stay in their homes. And if you just have a look on the map of Gaza Strip, where the length actually of Gaza Strip is just only 43 kilometers. I'm sure that most of the people don't know that. And the width is just from 5 to 10 kilometers. So it's all, the area is about 365 meters square. And it's hosting 2.4 million people, which consider the largest open prison in the world. Let's not stopping here, because I just want to go to when you look to the map, you will notice the difference between the Gaza Strip and the vast Palestinian lands which surrounding it. Palestinians are not allowed to enter this land, which is considered like empty land. People in Gaza Strip live in a population density which is 55,000 people per 1 square kilometer. This is in Jabalia and in Deir al-Balah. This is in Jabalia, where they just bombed it 1 hour ago. The population is 55,000, the density, 55,000 in 1 square kilometer. Where just a few meters away from them, you will find each Jewish one person live in 7 kilometers square. By what right does the occupation imprison 2.4 million people in an open prison without electricity, water, fuel, and they bombarded them day and night in front of the world's eyes. They bombed them from air, from land, from sea, everywhere without exception. There is no crossing, no travel, no seaport, no airport. Do you know what? That during just the last week only, the bombs that dropped on Gaza are more than which were dropped in 1 year in Afghanistan by America. And the bombs which dropped in Gaza within the 24 days are equivalent to the nuclear bomb dropped in Hiroshima. So when this will be end? What's the role that we should play to actually to stop this war immediately? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha. I think in all the discussions that one has participated on, it's the first time hearing from the person from Gaza, from Palestine. We've had many wonderful presentations from a participant who would have visited Palestine and Israel. So it's truly an honor for you to have shared so much with us. I know it's not enough time. I think obviously you are also conscious of the time we have, but we truly appreciate the immense information you have shared with us. It's truly an honor and also an eye opener. It's truly so. It's one Martin Luther King who once said, "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And it's on that backdrop that we have such this, because I think we all see an injustice happening in Palestine and in Gaza. On that note, I want to afford an opportunity to Dr. Ngcetane Vika to share also her piece on this matter. Then we're gonna come back. I do also want to even to the I'll open up the floor to also to the people who have joined us on Zoom on the issue of what do they think of the removal of the Israel embassy in South Africa, or suspension thereof, or the boycott of Israeli goods in South Africa, and the muteness, especially from those in the Christian community, the mute or the silence of the South African Council of Churches on this predicament which we face. So at this opportune time, let me give you a doctor.
Sorry. Good evening. Let me make two disclaimers very quickly. I'm battling flu, so my voice is quite hoarse, and I traveled, so I picked up flu where I was, and I brought it home, but I'm on the mend. That's the first thing. The second one, my video seems to be compromising the quality of the audio, so I had to make a call, and the call was I'd rather be audible than be seen. So I've made that choice. Let's cut to the chase because we don't have much time. It's 1911 and I was told you are supposed to end at 1930. Firstly, let me appreciate the contributions, especially the reflections made by the bishop on his visit on the Gaza Strip, and also appreciate the reflections, especially the historical context given by Ngcamisile. And then the most moving for me of the evening, Aisha, speaking from a deep ontological perspective, having lived. She comes from there. She understands. So I wanted to appreciate those three before I can make any contributions. If I had time, I would locate my reflections on three themes. The first one has been, in a way, been addressed, but it would have been what I would call the genesis of the conflict at the Gaza that we're seeing. And I think Ngcamisile and Aisha have spoken to it, and I won't waste your time on it. But I I thought it was important to locate our conversation there. Why are we here? Because the global community, especially West, looks at this deliberately, of course, as an event that happened from the 7th of October, when we all know it has been there for decades and decades. And Aisha even argues before 1948. And then, of course, Namisile reflected on that Balfour Declaration. And central to that point, number one, would have been that whole phenomenon of the chosen people / the versus the ones that are looking like are not chosen, and whether theological scholars should help us to deconstruct and perhaps reconstruct that very notion. Who are chosen people? And who chooses them? Is that biblical narrative even perpetuating oppression? And from whose lens can we even hinge upon that narrative? So number one would have looked at those kinds of things. And then the second point I would have loved us, if we had time to explore, is the challenges of the international order. The Palestine question should have been settled with the Oslo Accords. But the international order, with its imperfections, perhaps the word imperfections, I'm being kind to them. The choices that are made, especially by the West, led by the American empire, always seem to favor the Israelites over the Palestinians. And to what extent that order, which is accompanied by a massive machinery of media, and that massive machinery of media, if you open now media from the US, North America, Europe, and UK, all you will hear is how the lives of Israelis are more valuable than the lives of the Palestinians. And this is why these debates are important. I saw on the chart somebody saying that he or she hopes is not a talk show. And I was going to labor on that the first point of departure is these conversations. Before you can ask the question, what do we do with the current circumstances at Gaza? But you need first to educate. And the reason why we need these conversations, there are a lot of theological indoctrinations. I once attended a conference by leading theologians in the world. I had one who I respect, but whose name I won't mention, said that the Bible is not innocent. So when you read it from that perspective. And this can be very offensive to ears that don't appreciate critique, don't engage that even the Bible, because it was written by people, it projects a particular lens. So we needed to look at the international order, we deconstruct it. Why the US chooses in point blank, I mean, there is not even an apology from them. They stand in White House, Capitol Hill, every place in the US. They are pumping and pumping to Netanyahu's government. What about the lives in Palestine? Nobody cares about that. They don't even want to engage on that. So it talks to that international order. And within that space of the international order, then the UN Security Council sits there. And to what extent can it bite or it cannot bite? It's a discussion maybe that needed time, because that's where the crux of the problem is. Europe, UK are all together with the US supporting Netanyahu government. And it seems that the Palestinians are left for themselves to fend. And then the last point that I would have labored, what do we do as the Global South? But perhaps a direct question, what do we do as Africans? Maybe a more direct and poignant question would be, what do we do as South Africans? We've just experienced and undergone our own subjugation, discrimination. We know this pain. We know how to be overlooked, ignored, not to be seen for who we truly are. And I'm putting these to theologians, that our historical and theological consciousness should liberate us from that subjugation and the narrative biblical that is all over the show. That on its own, we have history on our side to educate and empower us. But theologians, their own consciousness should direct and lead us and guide these debates. And let me make a disclaimer as an activist intellectual myself. I stand with the Palestinians. I have to. I'm Black, a Black woman in South Africa. I know the sting of being discriminated. I know the sting of the world sometimes, decides to overlook your pain. I know when even Umkhonto weSizwe, ANC, APLA, PC were called terrorist organizations. So when they look at the context of Hamas, sometimes they forget that framing of these things matter. The defense from the Palestinians, the occupation of the Israelites for many decades, what other options are left for them to do is to watch in perpetuity. There are people dying. And we know that the disbandment of family will leave scars for entire generations of Palestinians who may never even meet each other again. Who knows? But we're here. So we must ask the difficult questions, therefore. What do we do? Is solidarity enough? Is that all that we can do? I don't know, but I submit that as South Africans, we have a responsibility to do something. And I was hoping that our churches would provide leadership, because the human cost and the escalation, especially what has been recently announced, that it is imminent, the ground invasion, the offensive one, really to what end?
Yes.
What would be the point of that? Why are they doing it?
Yes,
There's so
Doc.
much more to say, clearly, but we don't have time. And I had wanted people to engage, and my voice is also working against me, but at least it has given me some liberties to do those reflections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. That was quite a mouthful. There's a lot to talk about. I understand that we may never have enough time to deliberate on all the issues. I want to take this opportunity to open up to all those who have joined us via Zoom. And when I come back for the last words on our panels, I do want to think of your last words, but also consider the proposed or the talks around suspending or removing the Israel embassy in Pretoria, as well as of the boycott of the Israeli goods. I mean, we've seen the economic freedom fighters marching to the embassy of Israel in Pretoria. We saw the African National Congress marching here in Durban. So we can see some movements taking place, but we have not entirely seen the action from our government. So I will take this opportunity and open up briefly. Don't 30 seconds should suffice, just to make a comment or pose a question to our panelists. So you can just unmute yourself and then you make your comments, because I might not be able to read all the comments that are shared on the group. But I do want to say this. Someone has said, evening all, just for the better clarity for South Africans, the Kruger National Park is just a little bigger than Gaza Strip. This gives us an idea to those who have never been to Gaza, how big Gaza is, and what does this mean to such attacks that they are exposed to. So it's really a bad situation. So without any further ado, let me open up a floor for those who wish to make comments or ask questions. Just 30 seconds. We are almost to a close. The floor is yours. Just unmute yourself. Don't raise a hand, and just speak your piece. Whilst maybe people are thinking of what to comment on or focusing, is there someone there? All right. Someone said, having been to the Middle East myself in 2002, this person was exposed to the pain and brutality faced by Palestinians at the hands of the Zionist Israelis. Visiting the West Bank and the Gaza Strip was an eye-opener and indeed immense in humanity to men. I do hope that conversation will not only be a talk shop, but will ensure that those in power do something about the plight and the pain of the Palestinians so that justice is done. This is from Gordon Zite. So let me again open up an opportunity for people to have a word or two.
Hi, greetings everyone.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. Just want to thank you for organizing this kind of conversation. It's enlightening very much. And the speakers that have spoken have given us quite a lot to think about, actually challenged us into an action in some form, both as South Africans, but also as Africans. Want to pick a bone with what Dr. Terela was saying about the theological input. I think that Aisha's contribution suggested something that has been missing all along. The Abrahamic promise did not actually give Israel, which is the children of Jacob, did not give them a government in the land. It gave them a land where they will live and it will be rich. And it's amazing that from the side of the Palestinians, they are welcoming and inclusive in her discussion, as she was saying it. They are welcoming and inclusive of the Israelites, but it's the apartheid is on the side of the Israelites, who seem to want the government of their own, excluding the people that they actually found there. Now, for us as South Africans, that's very sensitive, much more as Africans, because even in South Africa, we cannot just speak as a collective South Africans, but we also have to speak as Africans specifically. So I think I appreciate this opportunity that you've given us to increase our understanding on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution. One is asking, what can we do? This is Jamila Khatun Adam. What can we do to stop this genocide? Dr. Ncedane Vika, you want to comment?
I didn't realize that question is posed to me, but nonetheless, there are a number of things we can do. Don't underestimate the power of putting pressure on national governments. Apartheid was, by and large, an outcome, the end of it at least, of a number of initiatives. Of course, our people did the bulk of the work, but also the pressure from international community played a role. So we have a responsibility. Sometimes people don't see value in marches, but they do put pressure on governments so that when they go and attend, United Nations Security Councils and all these international bodies, they somehow have our voices at our behind. Of course, it doesn't end there. Corporate South Africa can do a lot. It can provide, there are issues of food security, issues of health security. The list is endless in the Gaza. So those can be done. Those are practical interventions corporate South Africa can do. I don't want to talk about services because these things depend also on the international laws, and people just don't walk into a territory without processes, but they're practical things. Of course, even those who write, put pressure, reflect, especially scholars and academics who've got a responsibility to create intellectualism around it. That on its own is a contribution. Sometimes it doesn't look like one, but it is, because it provides and it expands the debate, begins to allow people to think deeply why it should matter, why we should be bothered with what is happening in the Gaza. So those kind of things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see Shahida Isaac has a hand up. I can see you wrote your question down, but let me allow you to actually say your piece verbally. Shahida.
Chair, this is a hugely complex issue, and about suggestions on how we deal with it and go forward, it's really problematic because Israel has violated and broke the agreement with the UN at every turn, at every corner. So we are not dealing with decent human beings, law-abiding, honorable, virtuous human beings. We are dealing with something else. And I don't think I have the time now to go into the detail on the way forward. But I have just one issue here on the BDS movement. How can we build momentum around that? There's a lot that needs to be done, but I'm just focusing on that for the moment. Thank you.
Can you repeat the BDM? What does it stand for?
The BDS, boycott, divest, sanctions.
Okay. If any of the speakers has an opinion on that, I would like to get a response from that. Thank you so much, Shahida.
Okay, I can I just like to say, you know, every time Israel aggresses against the Palestinian people like they're doing now, that's when public opinion rises up and we want to denounce and we want to talk about how we're going to deal with this scourge on humanity. We need to create long-term strategies to dismantle the state of Israel as a Zionist state. We need to listen to our Palestinian brothers and sisters and ask them, what is the solution that you want us to back you on? Sister Aisha is here. Let us hear from her. What do the Palestinian people want? Do you want a one-state solution? Do you want a two-state solution? One democratic state, two states living side by side? How would it work? What would Gaza play? The Palestinians must lead. And in terms of boycott, divestment, and sanction, right now there's a movement against Clover because it's owned by Israel. I think targeted activities like that for the long term is how we need to approach. And then also, we need to get rid of the ambassador from Israel. We cannot have a genocidal state having its ambassador on our land. It is just not reasonable. The Lady Pando said that we have to keep the ambassador here so we can engage. Like my sister who just spoke, Shahida said, we're not dealing with rational, reasonable people. We're dealing with people who are acting like Nazis. How do you compromise your standards with a Nazi? How do you find common ground with a genocidal people? You know, and the last thing, we need to stop being afraid of being called anti-Semitic because this is what they have weaponized against us. We're going to be called anti-Semitic and we're all scared to be called anti-Semitic. No. Let's start to dismantle Zionism. Let's start to question all the myths that Israel is based on. And if they call us anti-Semitic, that's fine, because we know why they are calling us anti-Semitic. They're not calling us anti-Semitic because they're trying to protect the Jewish people. They're calling us anti-Semitic because they're trying to promote colonialism and the desecration of the sanctity of the life of the Palestinian people. And then lastly, I want to say, Muslim people have always been embracing and welcoming of the Jewish people. In fact, if it wasn't for the Muslims, there'd probably be no Jews left on this planet. Okay, they took them in after the Reconquista of 1492 by Isabella and Ferdinand. They took them in during the Spanish Inquisition. They took them in during the Holocaust. And so if it wasn't for the Muslims, there would be no Palestinians. And then Benjamin Netanyahu has the audacity to go and say that Hitler would never have done the Holocaust if it wasn't for the Grand Imam of Jerusalem going and telling him to kill the Jews. They are rewriting history because they know the history, they know the truth, and so they're able to twist the truth. We need to educate ourselves. This is a long-term fight. It's not going to happen overnight. Even if the ceasefire is declared in Gaza, Palestine is still occupied. It is still occupied by a colonial terrorist regime. So please, can we start to focus on the long-term goals here? And that is how we're going to be able to target this regime and dismantle it. Thank you. You are muted.
Thank you. You were firing. I had to mute myself. I did not see any hand. Is there anyone who wants to open up their mic and speak their piece? We are almost out of time, but because I see there's a lot going on the inbox. You know, some Hafsa said, I just returned from Palestine last month. The heavily armed soldiers at every door of Al-Aqsa and in every part of Jerusalem is aimed at instilling terror and of terror in the hearts of Muslims and even Christians visiting the Holy Sepulchre and the Church of Nativity in Jerusalem. Like the South African Donbass system imposed by the racist apartheid regime in South Africa, the Palestinian nationals are under insufferable curfew and have absolutely no freedom of movement. The whole world needs to impose sanctions on Israel and the US. US needs to withdraw its support of Israel and pull back its warships as they have given Israel a big green flag to commit murder and genocide unscrupulously. These are some of the comments. There's quite a few. I just want to check before we wind this up if there's any. I see Samsung SM. If you want to comment, and then in a minute I'll give back to the panelists to have their last words. Go ahead, Samsung. You don't have your name there.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Maulana Abdullah. Sorry, I didn't realize we had Samsung on there.
Yeah.
I'm from Pietermaritzburg. Sister Aisha, it's a great opportunity to see you. Sister Pamela as well. It's a great opportunity as well. And brother, really, really fantastic. Just a few questions. My biggest problem is this. I'm still asking. I was involved in the struggle in the country. So I still carry the scars of the former regime. I'm very, very upset that we still have the Zionist state having a piece of their land. I mean, their embassy in our country. And Baba Madiba said this. He said that South Africa will never be free until Palestine is free. Now, I want to know why are our leaders so reluctant in dispelling and getting rid of this particular embassy, number one. And number two, why is it so difficult for them to tell the ambassador that we don't want you here? Because we've been through exactly the same thing. And the worst part of it all, Israel was a country that supported and propped up the apartheid regime in the country. So that is something which I think it's imperative that the government should be reminded that this is what we went through. This is what we've been through. Had we not been through that, we would not. I mean, if Israel was not, that's why Israel was the glove between the international world, because they were now taking the products through Israel and of ours and selling it internationally. I don't know if you're aware of that. So this is something which you should remind them, and this is what troubles me the most. And apart from like America, I'm just hearing somebody said about America. America is built on a genocidal country. There was no America. There's no whites in America. There were Red Indians there. There's no where are those people? So America is used to genocide around the world. It's the only country in the world that's being that has so many wars, that's created wars. So this is what I don't know. Honestly, something that I always said. I said the United Nations has got no teeth. It can't bite. And that's why like our honorable Honorable Pandu had said this, Minister Pandu. She said that the Security Council should be changed. This is what troubles me. We have 120 countries which said we want the ceasefire to be stopped. And one country says, no, we don't want it. And they veto the stuff. I mean, this was the General Assembly, 120 passed. But I'm talking about now, you are prepared to see people get murdered. You are prepared to see genocide taking place in front of your eyes. I ask you, is this a civilized world that we're living in? This is something we have to face America head on. America, because see, everyone is scared for World War III. It's going to happen sometime or the other. But if we can get the people in America as well, like what the movements are happening now, if we can get the people on the ground, they need another American revolution. And that's happening at the moment. If we can get the people on the ground there to really, really get up, I promise you, the country can change and we can have a completely different world with America with all its Zionists being removed from Parliament. And likewise, not only America, you got Britain, you got France, you got Italy, you got Germany, you got all these people there. But we should start. I don't have any context there. I'm hoping you have context there to get the people on the ground there and say, we need to now mobilize the people, because mass action speaks louder than words. Thank you, sir. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you so much. I want to now. I believe Yasmin, you've never. Okay, Yasmin will be our last participant. I'll give her to have the last comment or question, and then I want to give it back to our panelists for their last words, which I'll give them a minute each at least. Before Yasmin, you ask a question, I just want to read what the current runner for president of the United States, the Reverend Cornel West, also a scholar and an activist, he says, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. Yasmin, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Actually, I'm using my wife's phone. My name is Ahmed.
Salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam. I want to ask Sister Pamela a question regarding, you have some Christian people who believe that because the Bible says that the land belongs to Israel, and they believe that Israel isn't wrong in defending themselves using the Bible. So how would you correct someone who has that belief that because of the Bible, it's not Israel has a right to take the land of the Palestinians, especially in this aggressive manner? How would you answer them with the Bible?
So you can't be a Christian and then pretend that Jesus never told you to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And also, you can't be a Christian and not believe in the prophets that Jesus believed in. God told Jeremiah to tell the Jewish people that if you want to boast about anything, don't boast about your wealth, your knowledge, or your strength. Boast in that you know who God is. God shows unfading love, and he brings truth, he brings justice and righteousness into the world, and he delights in these things. So if someone claims to be one of the chosen people of God, they have to behave in a way that reflects the God that they are the chosen people of. Now, the great Rabbi Rashi also pointed out that the reason why God chose Abraham is because Abraham chose God. So everyone who chooses the God of Abraham, who chooses the God of Ishmael, of Jacob, the God of Jesus, the God of Muhammad, they are the people who are the chosen people of God. So we need to understand that the Bible has been manipulated, and anyone who knowingly manipulates the Bible cannot be choosing God because they're undermining God's word. I think it really requires us to be bold as people who believe in God and to say we're not going to allow the Bible, the scriptures of the Holy One, to be misused to advance the selfishness of anyone. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, all of these religions show that God, he is merciful, he is just, he is kind. The Jewish people also know this, and that is why you have so many Torah-believing Jews who oppose the state of Israel, because they say this does not reflect anything Jewish. Zionism is not Judaism. So, anyone who says to you that Jesus would be supporting what Israel is doing to the Palestinians doesn't know Jesus, or they're lying about him, which is a very grave injustice and a blasphemy.
Thank you for that.
Can I comment on that? Actually, in Islam, we have same thing on our Quran. I don't know if others know about that.
Just 1 second, Aisha. Because we're drawing to a close, let me then rather give you, as you comment on the previous speaker, also give you as your last word. Let me just give you 2 minutes. We're already over our stipulated time.
Thank you. I just want to mention that even in Quran, it is obvious that the God promised Israel the Holy Land, but it's, as I mentioned before, it wasn't a granted promise. It was conditional one, and it depends on their action. And actually, they abuse it, and by this they lose their right to live there. And it wasn't to expel everybody from that land, just to share the land with others. Why you have to expel the original population if you want to live in the same land? This is what I had as a comment of the previous question. Finally, I just want to add that there is actually significant responsibilities on many countries, and especially for countries which, like South Africa, which is not a part in any or in close relationship with any of the parts of the conflicts. So in any conflict, it should be there a neutral side who leads the negotiation or the agreements that we get to. That the thing that we lost, that we used to consider Europe and United Nations and the UN Security Council as represent the neutral entities, but now it's no secret that this is obvious that this is not exist anymore, as we all see Europe and is in the same side with Israel, and they supporting them and giving them the green light to bomb civilians and killing people in Gaza. So we actually hope that other countries such as South Africa, if they can, or any African unions or gathering of countries, they can put pressure on Israel to stop that, to sit on the table and to negotiate about the solution, because it's obvious that the violence will bring more violence, and we won't be, and this won't end if it's continue, if Israel continue bombing Gazans. Actually, the last thing that I want you to know that I have a magazine which is issued in 1976, and it has the same title of it looks like it's issued in same date. It's have the same title, that Israeli tried to evacuate Gazans from Gaza Strip, and the Arab are meeting to negotiate what they can do for that and how they can solve. So it's obvious that this issue was happening for 50 years and it's continue happening till now, and it won't work. They won't be able to evacuate Gaza Strip from people, and Hamas is part of the population of Gaza Strip. They can't expel Hamas and just throw them outside. Actually, they won the election in 2006, so they have that time they won by 43% of the population vote for them. So this is not the solution to just continue this war, but the object is to expel Hamas and force them to leave Gaza. This is won't be happen, and it's absolutely won't be happen, because as I told you, they are the population, and the solution won't be to send Gazans to Egypt, because this won't be a solution, and Gazans won't leave their land. So yeah, so we have to put more pressure on the government to do an action, which and I would suggest that if it is a union or African Union action, it's not a single country action, to put more pressure on Israel to listen to the international law, to obey the international law, to implement the agreements that was taken, which took before, and if we come now to a new agreement, and guarantee that this will happen on the ground, because nothing of the agreements that done between Israel and Palestinians, Israel implement on the ground. They just ignore it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
giving
so
me
much.
the chance.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if Dr. Ngentane is still here, but let me also give you a minute, Pamela, to have your last word. And then I'll give it to our lay leader of our church, Mr. Sibonga Ntshangase, just to give us a vote of thanks and the benediction.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel, and it's a pleasure. And thank you, Sister Aisha, for sharing your story and your insights. I believe we need to have the Palestinian people giving them platforms to speak and to express themselves and to tell us. The Palestinians have been telling the world for decades what's going on there. No one has been listening to them. So I think our first and foremost duty as human beings is now to give the Palestinian people a platform to really express themselves. And I think when we do this, we will be then given a proper basis and common ground as different people who love humanity to come together to fight against this injustice. As Sister Aisha has been saying, you know, international law must be applied. You know, she's saying that the parameters that we need to work within are the ones that have been established by the United Nations so that, you know, international law can be implemented justly and correctly in this situation. So I very much appreciate that. And I think, you know, for all of us here, we are here because we want to do what is right. And I also believe we need to create spaces where we can all come together, interfaith spaces, political, social, and economic spaces. And, you know, when Jesus said that the goats and the sheep and the wheat and the chaff are going to be separated, I believe we're at that time. There's no longer the ability to sit on the fence and pretend that we don't see what's going on. You have to choose, are you on the side of humanity or are you on the side of inhumanity? Jesus said you cannot worship Mammon and God, because we know that the people who are endorsing what Israel is doing are doing it for their own selfish reasons. They're doing it for the money. So we need to decide, are we worshiping the God of Abraham or are we going to worship the money that makes us feel like gods in this world? Thank you very much. And God bless everyone. And, you know, I look forward to us working on this project of the emancipation of Palestine for the good of all humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pamela. Can I also afford an opportunity to Dr. Huncetane Vika to have her last word as well?
Yes, because there is no time, just in summary, 3 things. Clarion call, ceasefire immediately. Second one, end occupation in Gaza, because the Palestinians have got a right to their self-determination, and we're here to pledge solidarity with them. And thank you for having me with my flu together. Bye.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Leila, as you get ready, I just want to say and quote the daughter of Martin Luther King, Reverend Bernice King, who she once said, continue to speak out against all forms of injustice to yourselves and others, and you will set a mighty example for your children and for the future generations. Let me give an opportunity to our lay leader of our church, Mr. Sbonga, if you can come through, sir. Just
thank you, Ndelu. I hope I'm audible. I'm struggling with my reception. Can you confirm
You're audible,
that?
sir. You're audible, sir.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Ndelu. In appreciating our participants, all of them, we really do appreciate. I'm being taken by the passage or the verse from Hosea chapter 4, verses 6. It says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also will reject you from being priest for me. Because you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children. And so I just want to say that influence of religion can make politics to be value-based, but that's only if it's a value-based religion itself. And our aim for this, it is for our ministers, our stewards, to be able to articulate the real truth about this conflict, just to enlighten our congregants. It won't help to solely rely on media, because that can be very much dangerous at times. But such an informative and eye-opening session like this one, it really makes us to speak from an informed point of view. And we really do appreciate, especially the emphasis on the contextual link between the current atrocities in Gaza to what was happening in our country under the apartheid regime. I think many people can relate to that, because honestly, it is not going to help us to say, let us pray for this conflict. Yet we do not understand and we cannot relate to the plight of people in Gaza. These are people of God. We are also people of God. So it's very much important that we pray for one another. I am actually glad that we've got Reverend Molo in attendance in this webinar. And I think our church in particular, it has taken different resolutions over the past years. And since this conflict is going on and unabated, I think it's high time that SACC take lead and we rally behind it in making a determination just to chant the way forward and take a solid voice in influencing our government, even our continental government, that is the African Union on this regard, because honestly, we cannot be on the fence on this matter. It's a matter of justice, and we stand for justice. We stand with justice. So thank you very much to everyone who has made time to attend, to our participants, to those who posed questions, who provided comments in giving information. It was all enlightening and eye-opening. We thank you very much. Thank you, Ndelu, for being our facilitator. To the bishop who opened this session, thank you so much, Bazalwane. Nangomuso, whenever we need you, please come on board so that we all become knowledgeable, because we all need knowledge. I'm not sure, facilitator, if there's anything that I'm leaving behind, but in the absence, maybe we can pronounce the benediction.
I appreciate that, my lady.
The benediction, if we can maybe unmute ourselves and
if we can all unmute, yes, if we can all unmute ourselves, those who are
maybe
able
open
to
our
share
videos as well.
Yes, who can open
just
their
to
videos.
Share the peace.
Let's do so. Let's do so. Let's see each other as we bless each other, as we lead us, lead. You can open your videos. Open your videos and your microphones. Yes, Reverend Khana, take off your hat. You can open up your mic. If you can open up your mic,
I just did. Don't worry.
Yeah, Lelida, you can lead us, sir.
And
Musa.
And we share in the benediction in the languages of our own choice. And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, so much.
Guys, this has been, amen. This has been a mediated conversation. Thank you very much for all who were able to attend. To quote Reverend Paul Verlaine last week, that conversation has only started. So we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to continue putting pressure, influencing the spaces where we are to try and play our part in the liberation of the people of Palestine in whatever form that we can. Thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you so much, Dr. Vika. Thank you so much, Pamela. The conversation continues.
Thank you.
Saidun, thank you so much. I see you.
Thank you, Saidun.
Thank you.
I'm available for Palestine solidarity anytime. You're looking for anything, just knock on my door and I'll be there to help. We need to do our best for humanity. Thank you very much.
We need to continue to put this for a plan for long time. Actually, I see people who are, mashallah, very active. They are very aware and acknowledge about the Palestinian conflict. But the problem that it's after the wars or when there is something happening there, they will be very active. But after that, everyone will get busy with his personal issues, and this is fade until it's disappeared. So actually what we need to put a future plan and a continuous plan. Small efforts, but continued one.
Sustain.
Yes, sustain it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But
thank you, Aisha. Thank you. That's powerful. That's a mouthful. Guys, good night.
I also want to appreciate the church's input at this moment in time. We really appreciate everyone coming together to
Yeah.
address the challenges that we face as humanity. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate.
Aisha, thank you so much. Much
Thank you
appreciated.
so much. Thanks a lot to Charles. Thank you.
Good
Thank
evening.
you. Bye.
Thank
Good
you so
evening.
much.
Bye, everyone. Good evening,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Sadun.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
Wa alaikum
Assalamu
salam.
alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam.
Peace be on all of you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Telera farum dal.
Abulala Ponjez.
Telera farum dal.
What's the guy what you're in, man? Yes, fun now. Zabule.
Eh?
What's the guy what you're in? Fun now. Here, Bulali.
Ah, ngana ben sokol besimkele umgesa baso oko sokol.
Ah, okay.
So good.
So, put